It's November 8th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with another rate cut by the U.S. Federal Reserve. The Fed lowered its key interest rate again by a quarter percentage point, now bringing the target rate to the 4.5% to 4.75% range. Stocks closed positive with the S&P 500 and Nasdaq ending at record highs. Russian President Vladimir Putin suggests Russia could hold military exercises with North Korea, while Ukraine continues to claim North Korea lost soldiers in the Kursk region. President Yoon Suk-yeol offered an apology to the nation on Thursday for causing concern to the people over controversies involving the First Lady and a political consultant. And he promised to revamp state affairs to meet public expectations. We begin in the U.S. The Federal Reserve went ahead with another rate cut, signaling a continued easing of monetary policy. Our Moon Hae-ryun starts us off.
The Federal Reserve has cut rates once again as inflation and labor market conditions in the United States show signs of easing. On Thursday local time following the Federal Open Market Committee meeting, Fed policymakers slashed its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points, bringing it down to the 4.5 to 4.75% range.
We continue to be confident that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the economy and the labor market can be maintained, with inflation moving sustainably down to 2%.
September's Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, a key measure of inflation, showed that the rise of year-on-year inflation fell to 2.1%, while Fed Chair Jerome Powell commented that job market conditions remain solid. This latest decision from the U.S. Central Bank follows a big rate cut of half a percentage point in September, which was the first significant rate cut since 2020. Markets had largely anticipated a quarter-point rate cut at this meeting, leading to stocks closing higher on Thursday, continuing the strong rally fueled by Donald Trump coming out on top in the presidential election. The benchmark S&P 500 and tech-heavy Nasdaq both closed at a record high. With the Fed's press conference coming just 2 days after the presidential elections, Powell stated that the results would not factor in their monetary policy decisions in the near future. He also answered questions about the possibility of stepping down if Trump, a known critic of Powell, requested his resignation with a no, and emphasized that he believes a president does not have the legal authority to remove Fed governors from their positions. This latest decision brings the interest rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. back down to 1.5 percentage points once again. The gap had widened to 1.75 percentage points after the Fed's big rate cut in September and the Bank of Korea's smaller rate cut of 25 basis points last month. The BOK is scheduled to hold its final monetary policy meeting of the year at the end of November, as the Fed expects to cut rates further, although it's not clear how quickly cuts will come. Eyes are on how the BOK will respond. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Now, there's still one more Fed meeting left on December 18th. Will the final Fed decision be affected by Trump's return in any way? We're joined by Professor Greg Butek. Welcome back, Professor Butek.
Thanks for having me.
So, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said it won't. What's your take on it, Professor?
Yeah, I mean, so the U.S. economy has been right on track in terms of unemployment and inflation. The Fed has been comfortably, slowly bringing down interest rates from their highs earlier in the year, and the expectation is just for another rate cut, for things to continue apace as they have been. The Fed has always been very careful to maintain its political independence. I don't think Trump's victory will impact that. And I do think Powell will continue to act independently regardless of who is president. If you recall, Trump was the one who appointed Powell, although they've had some public conflicts, and Trump has been sort of unusual in publicly criticizing Powell. But Powell, to his credit, sort of came out and said today he wouldn't leave if Trump asked him to, and that he thinks that Trump lacks the legal authority to fire him. Now, the main way I can see politics entering the Fed's decision-making will be a little more in the future, which is who ultimately replaces Powell after his term ends in 2026. I don't think the new chair would be politically motivated per se, but it is likely that Trump is going to look for a chair whose views sort of largely mirror Trump's and who shares a similar economic strategy.
Well, Wall Street welcomed the news of Donald Trump's victory, with 3 of its indexes hitting new all-time highs on Tuesday, Wednesday. Now, but I hear it's not the best news for the Korean stock markets. The question is, why is that?
Sure. Well, so U.S. markets were higher. Rates on U.S. Treasuries were also higher. Kind of one interpretation is a very positive one for the U.S. Markets expect more growth under Trump due to tax cuts or deregulation. But the higher Treasury rates in particular may also sort of reflect an expectation of higher future inflation related to Trump's tariffs and higher deficits. So economists broadly, including me, think these tariffs are a very bad idea, and it would lead to much higher prices for consumers in the U.S., much worse than the inflation we saw post-COVID. And then, as you mentioned, for Korean stocks, I think these moves lower are really about the fear of tariffs. Additionally, these tariffs would hurt Korean companies through reduced exports to the U.S. This is likely to have the largest impact on companies that rely a lot on exports as opposed to selling domestically. And I think market prices are really reflecting the possibility that these tariffs may be passed in the future.
Before we talk more about Trump's tariffs, let's talk about the South Korean won. One tumbled right after Trump secured his second term in the Oval Office. Could you explain what happened?
Sure. I mean, I think it's related to this fear of tariffs. So if tariffs are imposed on Korean exports to the U.S., the quantity of those exports would decrease. And if American companies are buying less from Korea, it means there's a lower demand for Korean won relative to dollar to make those purchases. So this pushes down the value of the won relative to the dollar. I think also partly this is a reaction just to the higher interest rates I mentioned in the U.S. When U.S. interest rates rise, that tends to be good for the dollar.
Well, Trump will no doubt want to tariff China as high as 60%, which will be a big blow to South Korea, considering we are heavily dependent on exports. How should South Korea, do you think, brace for the possible impact?
Sure. Well, I think it really depends on the details of the tariffs, and often we don't know the details until Trump presents them. If U.S. tariffs only fall on China, that could be good for Korea as Korean exports become relatively more competitive. But if Trump implements these across-the-board tariffs that he's mentioned from time to time, including on South Korea, that would certainly reduce Korean exports to the U.S. I think sort of more broadly, major exporter countries like China, like Korea, are not in a great position to absorb sort of excess exports globally. And also big importer countries like the U.S. and some countries in the Euro, they're sort of in the midst of enacting more protectionist policies. And that's just not good news for countries that rely a lot on exporting their goods.
Well, Trump said himself that tariff is his favorite word, so we have to, brace and prepare in any way. Now, Trump mentioned also that U.S. wants to work with South Korea in the shipbuilding industry, especially in naval shipbuilding. What kind of aid do you think Trump is really talking about here?
Yeah, so I mean, broadly, the United States is interested and has been interested in building a stronger coalition of Asian partners, really to help counter China. And South Korea is a major part of that coalition. South Korean shipbuilding is a dominant player globally, especially compared to the U.S., where there's really relatively little shipbuilding. And I think, many of Trump's ideas are sort of light on details, but the aid could take the form of either direct orders from Korean shipbuilders or joint ventures in Korea or in the U.S. I have something in mind. Maybe it looks a little similar to the TSMC plant that recently began operations in Arizona. You could see sort of an analogous thing happening in the U.S. with some Korean partners. Now, given the strength of Korea's shipbuilding industry, this seems like a really natural partnership, although it's a little hard to tell how this interacts with Trump's calls for tariffs. However, we saw last time when he was president, often the ideas sort of come out difficult to understand in an internally consistent way. You could imagine this looks something like, well, there's tariffs on Korean imports, except for strategically important industries like shipbuilding.
Right, at least we have something to look back on 4 years ago. Alrighty, Professor Butek, thanks so much for connecting with us all the way from D.C. this morning. You enjoy your evening there.
Thank you very much.
And U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday promised a peaceful transfer of power, a day after the U.S. presidential elections, which saw Donald Trump defeat Vice President Kamala Harris. Speaking at the White House, Biden called on Americans to accept Trump's victory and vowed an orderly transfer of power. During a congratulatory phone call to Trump, Biden also said he promised to direct the entire government to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. Now, the U.S. president also called the recent election honest, fair, and transparent. Russian President Vladimir Putin has noted the possibility of his country and North Korea conducting joint military drills. Now, the hint came as Ukraine continues to point out there have been casualties among North Korean troops in combat against Ukraine. Lee Seung-jae reports.
According to TASS news agency on Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin raised the possibility of Moscow and Pyongyang holding joint military exercises. During his remarks, he cited the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty he signed with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in June. The treaty includes a mutual defense clause for military assistance in the event of aggression by another state. Putin added that the treaty is nothing new, comparing it to a previous Soviet-era treaty that has since expired. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky announced on Thursday that some of the 10,000 North Korean troops deployed to the Kursk region were involved in combat, resulting in casualties. However, Zelensky did not mention the scale of North Korean casualties. He added that if no corresponding measures are taken in regard to the North Korean troop deployment, more will be sent to Russia to assist them in the ongoing war. When asked about U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's plan to end the war soon, the Ukrainian president said he did not know such details and had not discussed the situation with Trump. Zelensky also raised skepticism that Trump could end the war quickly, while stressing that entering into ceasefire negotiations without security guarantees could be very dangerous. Meanwhile, U.S. Department of Defense Deputy Spokesperson Sabrina Singh says the Pentagon cannot confirm whether North Korean troops have engaged in battle with Ukrainian soldiers yet. However, she noted that given the fact that the troops are in Kursk, the possibility of them being engaged in battle is high. Singh says the Pentagon's assessment is that there are 10 to 11,000 North Korean troops in Kursk, but added that Pyongyang has not yet deployed additional troops. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
A United Nations meeting on North Korean human rights took place in Geneva on Thursday, but the North completely denied accusations of human rights violations and instead blamed the U.S. Bae-eun-ji has the details.
For the first time in around 5 years, member states of the United Nations gathered in Geneva to address the issue of human rights in North Korea. The Universal Periodic Review, or UPR, is a mechanism that calls on each UN member state to go through a peer review of its human rights record every 4.5 years. The North Korean representative at the meeting denied all accusations of human rights violations and blamed the United States for getting in the way of protecting its people's human rights, adding that human rights means national sovereignty to the North.
The efforts of the DPRK to ensure its people full enjoyment of their rights are confronted with a series of challenges and obstacles, such as the political and military provocations and anti-DPRK human rights campaigns of the United States, deeply rooted in its extremely hostile policy towards the DPRK.
The U.S. Special Envoy on North Korean human rights issues at the meeting called on Pyongyang to dismantle political prison camps and release unjustly detained political prisoners. Thousands of people are believed to be detained in political prison camps, where they have been subjected to torture and harsh labor. But another North Korean official stressed that there are no such things as political prisoners or political prisoner camps in the North. He claimed that there are only criminals who committed anti-state offenses and that there are not many of them in number. Meanwhile, South Korea publicly brought up the issue of Korean detainees in North Korea, the first time for Seoul to do so at a Universal Periodic Review meeting.
Immediately resolve the issues of abductees, detainees, and unrepatriated prisoners of war, as well as the issues of separated families, and particularly promptly release 6 Korean nationals who are held against their will by the DPRK.
There are currently 6 South Koreans detained in North Korea, including 3 missionaries, Kim Jong-uk, Kim Guk-gi, and Choi Chung-gil. They have been held captive for as long as 11 years, while their whereabouts and fates are unknown. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
2 people are dead and 12 more are missing after a fishing vessel sank early Friday morning off Jeju Island. According to the Korea Coast Guard, a report was received around 4:33 a.m. on Friday that the 129-ton trawler 135 Kimsongo was sinking about 24 kilometers northwest of Pyeongdo Island in Jeju. Now, of the 27 people on board, 16 Koreans and 11 foreigners, 15 were found in nearby vessels and transported to a hospital in Jeju. Of these 15, 2 Korean crew members were confirmed to have died after being taken to hospital. The Korea Coast Guard and Navy are searching for the 12 missing crew members, while President Yoon Suk-yeol has ordered a full-scale rescue operation. President Yoon addressed the nation in a televised speech on Thursday, where he offered an apology for causing public concern over recent political controversies, especially surrounding the First Lady. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the details.
At his halfway mark address and press briefing on Thursday, the first thing President Yoon Suk-yeol did was to apologize for recent criticism against him over his connections to an obscure political consultant, Myung Tae-gyun.
대통령이라는 것은 변명하는 자리가 아닙니다. 모든 것이 제 불찰이고 제 부덕의 소치입니다. 국민 여러분께 먼저 죄송하다는 말씀, 진심 어린 사과의 말씀부터 드리고 그리고 이 국정 브리핑을 진행하겠습니다.
This was the biggest issue at hand building up to the briefing. The main opposition, the Democratic Party of Korea, leaked a recorded phone call between then President-elect Yoon and Myung, during which they discussed the ruling party's candidate selection process ahead of a by-election in 2022. A president or president-elect shouldn't be interfering in party politics. Also, other recordings surfaced that showed First Lady Kim Gun-hee's connection with Myung and her possible involvement in politics. President Yoon denied any wrongdoing but accepted that he should have acted more cautiously when he became a politician. President Yoon did acknowledge that it was his fault for not changing the means of communication for him and his wife after becoming a public figure.
이게 전부 제 책임입니다. 왜냐하면 후보 시절과 또 당선인 시절과 대통령이 됨으로써 이 소통의 방식을 좀 매정하지만 바꿔야 됩니다.
Continuing on domestic politics, President Yoon also faced questions regarding what looks like a fallout with the ruling People Power Party chair Han Dong-hoon, who has been a close confidant of Yoon's since the two's prosecutor days, claiming that a part of that is from the media stirring more conflict. He also said, when both the top office and the ruling party work diligently together to deliver to the public, their relationship will naturally improve over time. President Yoon's answers to foreign policy questions were also highly anticipated as he came into the briefing just a couple hours after his phone call with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. Concerns have been rising that the America First policy could impact South Korea's industries, but President Yoon instead showed optimism.
제가 트럼프 대통령이 얘기하는 이러한 정책들은 그건 우리 기업에게 굉장히 좀 불리하지 않냐. 참 걱정이다. 이런 얘기를 하면 걱정하지 마라. 또 그것이 어쨌든 한국 기업에게 크게 피해가 안 가게끔 여러 가지 잘 풀어나갈 것이니까 그런 얘기들을 계속 하더라고요.
He also touched on the war in Ukraine, especially with North Korea's deployment of troops for Russia. He said there are certain things from the deployment that could directly threaten the peace on the Korean peninsula. Therefore, depending on Pyongyang's involvement, he isn't ruling out weapon supply to Ukraine, beginning with defensive weapons. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Kim Xiang. Good morning, Xiang.
Good morning, Dami.
Let's begin today in California, and wildfires there. How bad are they?
That's right, Dami. The mountain fire in California's Ventura County has burned into residential areas with flames engulfing a number of homes. Now, authorities say that the fire in Ventura County, just northwest of Los Angeles, began on Wednesday morning local time. Now, it has already burned over 19,600 acres and more than 14,000 evacuation notices have been issued. Reports say that at least 2 people have been injured and several homes and structures were damaged or destroyed by fire. The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection has stated that the fire was an immediate threat to life, calling for prompt evacuation of residents, while law enforcement has closed the area from public access. The U.S. National Weather Service has issued a particularly dangerous situation red flag alert as the fire has spread quickly, driven by strong winds. Now in Mozambique, tensions are rising as demonstrators clashed with police in the country's capital Maputo on Thursday, as protesters continue to dispute the results of the election on October 9th, which keeps the ruling Frelimo party in power. Mozambique's election authorities said the Frelimo party won the general election, but civil society group and the opposition presidential candidate, Venancio Mondlane, said it was a fraud and that the Frelimo party registered almost 900,000 fake voters among the country's electorate of 17 million. Now, according to official results, the Frelimo party's candidate, Daniel Chapo, secured over 70% of the vote, extending the party's 49 years of control over Mozambique since its independence from Portugal. While riot police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at the protesters on Thursday, Human Rights Watch said that at least 18 people had been killed in the police crackdown since the election. Australian Olympic breakdancer Arirang, who became an overnight sensation after her signature kangaroo moves won her 0 points at the Paris Olympics, has told a Sydney radio station that she will no longer compete. Now, 37-year-old Rachel Gunn said that she had intended to continue competing, but said it's too difficult now. Gunn called the backlash from the Olympics really upsetting. That includes a petition signed by over 50,000 people who accused her of manipulating the selection process for the Australian Olympic team. Now, while the breaking category debuted in Paris, it won't be part of the 2028 Games in Los Angeles as it was removed from the Olympic program. Argentine authorities on Thursday said that 3 people have been charged in connection with One Direction singer Liam Paynes' death. Payne died after falling from his hotel room balcony in Buenos Aires last month. The 3 people charged includes a suspected drug dealer, a hotel employee, and a person close to the late singer. Now, all 3 has been accused of supplying Payne with drugs, while one was charged with abandonment of a person followed by death. The former boy band member's autopsy revealed that Payne had traces of alcohol, cocaine, and an antidepressant in his system when he died.
Today's morning commute was still cold enough to wear a winter jacket, but the cold snap should ease this afternoon and it should turn much more comfortable by the time we head out for lunch, rising 10 to 15 degrees higher from the chilly morning lows. Other than Jeju, we should have promising late autumn weather this weekend with temperatures staying above norms. Highs will hike near 20 degrees here in the capital. So I'm guessing many will go out for autumn hiking to enjoy the beauty of nature. And here are some tips for having a safe hike, but also note that the air is getting drier, so be careful with anything that could cause a spark. Now, checking on today's highs now, Seoul gets up to 17 degrees Celsius, Daegu topping out at 18 degrees, Busan at 20 degrees Celsius. Sunnier skies in the forecast for the upper regions today. Enjoy the pleasant autumn weather this weekend, but rain is in the forecast for Jeju on Sunday. Well, next week looks to be a warmer one into Sunung Day on Thursday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.
천혜의 자연관광지와 이순신 장군의 충절의 정신이 공존하는 경상남도에서 푸르드 경남 2024 스페셜 대회가 펼쳐집니다. 약속의 땅, 미래 100년의 도시 통영. 일상이 여행인 그곳, 다정다감 거제. 매력발산 천만 생태 관광도시 국민고향 보물섬 남해. 변화와 혁신을 선도하는 도시 창원. 아름다운 경남 남해안의 관광지를 투어하는 푸르드 경남 스페셜 대회에 여러분의 많은 관심 바랍니다.
How to survive in Korea. BBQ Restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
세상에 기가 막힌 뷰다. 김치 스마일 해피하게. 아우 시원하긴 하다 여기 들어오니까. 바다 속으로 들어가는 걸 말하자면.
뻥 뚫려요 완전.
맛있어요.
울진으로 놀러와.
Presiding over Monday's cabinet meeting following his latest diplomatic agenda in New York, President
South Korea's economy will grow.
The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged.
Mission complete for rocket booty selfish.
Seoul is rallying in hopes of bringing the World Expo 2030.
Arirang.
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama. A story of us where hope and despair coexist. Fun and refreshingly satisfying. K-dramas carry warmth and move people's hearts. Meet the fascinating stories of Korea through K-dramas.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Friday, November 8th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin and you're watching News Generation. Today we're joined by Kwon Ju-yeon.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And Lee Won-bin.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. It's Friday, so we're going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Friday is time to explore topics and issues that resonate with young people around the world here on News Generation. And today we're going to talk about a new wedding trend among our generation. So here in Korea, spring and fall are the most popular seasons for weddings because of the cozy, pleasant weather. So starting off on a light note, have you attended weddings recently, Ju-yeon?
Yes, I have. I have attended one at Seongkyungan University. If you do a wedding ceremony at Seongkyungan University, it means that you're doing a traditional wedding ceremony over there. It was truly unforgettable. Well, the historic architecture and beautiful gardens made for a stunning backdrop. And the bride arrived in a traditional wedding palanquin, which is known as kama in Korean, while the groom just walked in, allowing everyone to experience an old-style ceremony. Well, this added a unique charm that both Korean and also the international guests are truly enjoyable. So it felt like stepping back in time, an absolutely unique experience for me.
Sounds like you had a pleasant time there.
I did indeed.
Right, so what about you, Won-bin?
It's definitely been a while since I've been to a wedding. Let's see. The last wedding that I went to was actually my Master Sergeant's wedding, who I was very close with during my military service. But recently, I was invited to a wedding, which I do look forward to attend. It's a conventional wedding event held at a wedding hall. She told me a lot about the preparations, and I felt that there were a few differences to point out between the wedding culture in Korea and North America. Unlike North America, we like to invite, in Korea, we like to invite as many people as possible. Traditionally, people like to have big weddings and invite people as long as they have some sort of a connection, such as coworkers or even club or hobby club members. Some people even get upset because of this culture, because they're not invited to the wedding, and even though they do not have a close relationship.
Right. So we're seeing a difference in wedding culture not only between cultures and countries, but we're also seeing differences between generations. And that's because millennials and Gen Z are known for rethinking traditions and customs, often choosing what best suits their style and values, which is quite different from the previous generation. So, Ju-yeon, are we seeing this difference in mindset in wedding choices too?
Yes, definitely we are seeing some different mindsets here. In Korea, traditional wedding customs like pebek ceremonies or the officiants, pebek ceremony is a ritual where the bride offers food and receives a blessing from the groom's family. They've got to bow each other, have mostly faded these days. And while factory-style weddings, those are known as quick back-to-back ceremonies in wedding halls, are still common, many young people dislike this formal format. So this has led to a rise in small weddings, party-style ceremonies, and even skipping the wedding itself altogether. So surveys show that many are open to skipping the ceremony entirely. According to a recent survey by Kayon Marriage Information Company, attitudes toward wedding ceremonies in Korea are shifting. So when asked how they would plan their ceremony if they were to marry, only 21% of respondents felt that a traditional wedding was absolutely necessary for them. And on the other hand, 38%, the largest group, were open to skipping the ceremony altogether, provided both partners agreed. In the meantime, 30% weren't keen on having a wedding, but felt they should have one for their parents' sake. Quite important in South Korea. Lastly, 11% felt that the ceremony wasn't needed at all. So these results highlight a clear trend toward more flexible and personal approaches to weddings, with many feeling that the traditional formal wedding is becoming less essential for their lives.
Right, because during our parents' generation, it was quite kind of a must to have these traditional, conventional wedding ceremonies. So this is definitely a change that we're seeing among our generation. Now, Wonbin, are you also witnessing or feeling this change as well?
Yes, I do, and I do strongly agree with Chun as well. It seems like following the normal trend is fading away, especially the location for the wedding. Younger generations prioritize having a very special and one and only wedding for their marriage, rather than sticking to the typical factory-style wedding, as Chun mentioned earlier. Unique wedding locations are commonly available around the country, such as traditional palaces, open fields, and even big balconies as well. Some Gen Zs and millennials even travel abroad to have their very own special wedding.
Right. So as Wonbin mentioned, more young couples are opting for non-traditional and sometimes unexpected wedding venues that you've just seen from the footage. And recently, some young couples in China even made headlines for this trend. So tell us more about that.
Yes, a young couple in China recently caught people's eye by having their wedding at a McDonald's.
The fast food chain.
That is right, and at one of the restaurants, a hot pot place in China. So traditional weddings in China, think about it, they are usually very lavish. They spend a lot of money on that, held in hotels with expensive drinks, fancy setup. So this couple decided on a much more low-key, affordable approach for their lives. So this reflects a growing trend among young Chinese people to skip the expensive, complex wedding preparations, traditions in favor of more personal and budget-friendly celebrations.
Right. So this budget-friendly wedding ceremony at a McDonald's is definitely very interesting and has drawn a lot of attention. So Wonbin, tell us a bit more about why this young couple chose to get married there.
Of course. They said that it was one of their go-to options for their dates, which I think is cute, romantic, and smart as well, because another big benefit that they had from this small wedding is the savings. And apparently this budget wedding is becoming a trend in China and is not an eye-opener anymore. Due to the Chinese tradition of weddings being grand and exceptionally presentable, the weddings do come at a cost. On average, the cost of a wedding in China is roughly $30,000 and can easily go beyond that. This number is more than double of the average annual income of China. Due to this grand and exceptional price, younger generations in China are starting to be hesitant on selecting the traditional style of wedding. Following this trend, surprisingly, some McDonald's branches in China actually offer a wedding package for only $300, which includes a bouquet, and you're gonna love this, made of McNuggets.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyways, going back on track, this is a great representation of how younger generations consider smaller budget weddings to be more reasonable. On top of that, the couple that Juyeon mentioned actually went to Greece for their photo shoot with the money that they saved from the wedding, which is another great example that shows how people are making decisions based on what they value, moving away from the conventional standard.
Right. So let's talk a bit more about the other reasons. Some of the other reasons our generation is choosing non-traditional wedding venues aside from affordability and change in values.
I think there will be many reasons for that. Well, the trend toward diverse wedding venues reflects a shift in values among younger generations, what they prefer, what's precious in their life. In China, the high costs of traditional weddings have led many to skip them altogether, while in Korea, more couples are choosing smaller, more personal ceremonies, or even opting for no wedding at all. The MZ generation often wants a wedding that reflects their unique style instead of following set traditions. They've got to post that on their social media network. And celebrities, for example, like actress Lee Na-young and Wonbin, not the Wonbin here, set an example by having a humble, very private wedding in Gangwon province.
It was like at a field, right?
It was in a wheat field. So it inspired others to embrace a relaxed, meaningful approach to their own celebrations. They even provided some 잔치국수 noodles to their guests as well. And another example is Yuri and Lee Sang-soon. They held a small wedding at their home in Jeju-do Island, inviting only family and close friends all together. Such examples, this reflects a trend of moving away from traditional weddings in favor of more personal, meaningful and celebrations for themselves. So love doesn't need a ballroom, just the right people.
And they think that these small or unconventional wedding venues are hip and they're trending these days. Right, so Wonbin, do you want to add a bit more details or other reasons?
Yes, building on to Juyeon's point, this trend is just a part of the big shift of young people's mindset. Like Juyeon said, millennials and Gen Zs believe that making decisions that satisfies them personally are more appropriate regardless of the tradition. Another point to mention is that people value their close relationships more than their overall social recognition. For instance, having a bridal shower is now settling as a new culture in Korea. Normally, the bride's close friends, usually a group of 3 to 5, prepare a surprise party for the bride with cute and shiny decorations or sometimes even costumes. This shows that people like to invest their time and money into a smaller, sincere moments compared to the past when there was only the big main wedding event. Considering the change in the society being more open and acceptable, it seems like people are adapting their logic of decisions accordingly as well.
Right. And as we're talking about the change in wedding culture among young people, mainly driven by their change or difference in values from the previous generation, let's get a sense of how we feel as part of the young generation. So please raise your O or X sign for each statement. We prepared 3 statements. Number 1, I would prefer a wedding at a conventional, traditional wedding hall. 1, 2, 3. So Juyeon O and Wonbin X. So let's first hear from Juyeon.
Well, if I have a chance to marry once again, either not with the same person, of course, I would choose a conventional hall once again because it's convenient. We have to think about the transportation for the guests. And I tied the knot at my university, my graduate school. It was so beautiful, and it was a good chance for my friends and my relatives to look around the campus. And most of all, the food was delicious. So I chose that place.
That's definitely an important part when choosing your wedding venue.
Indeed.
Right. Now, Wonbin, you chose X. Why?
Well, for me, I think celebrating your very special moment with your close friends or families is more valuable rather than having a big audience. I would have to ask my parents about this to get confirmation, but I feel like having only my friends rather than unnecessary people, I think that'll be more memorable for me as well.
Okay, so now let's move on to our second statement. Number 2, I can understand why some would stretch their budget for a luxury venue like a 5-star hotel. 1, 2, 3. So O and X. Once again, why O?
Well, it's their choice. If they have the budget to afford it, if their parents can afford it, I think it's their choice. They can do that for that one day, inviting other people, because you've got to leave the photos, the photos are quite important for the bride and the grooms as well. So I think it's their choice, up to them, but they've got to work harder after the wedding ceremony in order to pay it off, right?
Right. Now, Wonbin, you chose X once again. Tell us why.
Yeah, I feel like what people often forget is that although your wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event, you still have to go to bed and wake up the next day to go to work. And you have to carry on with your financial plans and budgeting as well. Spending too much money, especially beyond what you're capable of, can put you in a massive financial struggle that can take a long time to recover. Therefore, I disagree.
Right, because usually having these luxury weddings at a 5-star hotel or other fancy venues, they cost a lot. So it's definitely something that we must consider when we make our budget. Number 3, I think it's perfectly fine to have a wedding at a place like McDonald's or a hot pot restaurant. 1, 2, 3. Oh, both. Oh, why?
I think you've got to do your wedding ceremony in a meaningful place that both of them can share. So McDonald's is fine. If it is fine for the couple, I think it will be fine. But, well, you've got to ask your parents in advance, you know. In my wedding, FYI, I did, as I mentioned, I did it in a conventional hall in the school, but I did some fancy events, some performances. One of my friends, he was wearing a glitter jacket.
Oh.
We sang together. I danced together. You know, it's not quite usual to a bride that dances in a wedding, so it was kind of a unique experience for me as well.
I see. Now, what about you?
For me, I think that young people actually prefer to have celebrations at locations that they're comfortable at. And I think McDonald's, hot pot restaurants, or for Korea, even Korean barbecue restaurants are a perfect fit because they do have delicious food as well, which is very important.
But with fire, you know, in barbecue restaurants, they have fire as well.
Oh, right. You can get the electric grilled place,
course,
maybe.
yes.
Yeah, you have to compromise. But because of the food and how comfortable the environment is, I think it is completely okay for young people to have weddings at restaurants like this.
So I think we've reached a consensus that as long as the bride and groom are satisfied and comfortable, where you have your weddings doesn't really matter if you get the confirmation from your parents, because here in Korea, wedding is more like a family thing.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, expanding our discussion, we also asked our viewers for their thoughts on traditional versus unconventional wedding venues, and let's see what they have to say. So we conducted a survey on our Arirang News YouTube channel from October 31st to November 6th with the question, what's your take on evolving wedding trends? And 78% said anything goes, while 22% said they would stick with tradition. If we take a look at some of the comments, I definitely think it should be whatever the couple wants to give themselves memories of their wedding. Our second comment, traditional is overrated. Best wedding story I read about was they set up in their backyard and had a big BBQ cookout. No stress and only family and close friends. Our final comment is I would prefer if the trend moved away from the traditional Korean wedding and more to a personalized experience. So based on the survey and comments from our viewers, we can see that the young generation is definitely opting for wedding ceremonies that suits their values, their beliefs, and what they really like. And now for a more perspective on how our generation views weddings, we're going to invite an American Gen Z who recently tied the knot.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So today we're joined by Brandon M. Jones, an American Gen Z who recently got married. Welcome back to NewsGen, Brandon.
Well, hello. Well, thank you for having me again, and I'm always happy to be here.
Hello, and congratulations on getting married, Brandon.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, I got, it was on June 9th of this year, so it was really great. It was in Korea, so I'm very happy. You can see the ring.
Whoa. We're very happy for you as well. Now, Brandon, our first question to you is, what is considered a typical wedding venue in your home country, which is the United States?
Well, usually most people will go to the religious house of worship. So a church, a mosque, a synagogue, those are usually places that they go. So if I was in the States, that's where I would have went. But for me in Korea, I ended up having an outdoor wedding, which was different. It wasn't one of the conventional factory weddings. It was like 12 hours all day. So it was really fun.
Wow. Congratulations, first of all, Brandon. And have you seen millennials or Gen Z couples in the US choosing unique venues like McDonald's?
Yeah, I've seen some people doing it, not specific in America. I know there was something in South Africa. There was a couple that got engaged at a KFC, and then the internet made fun of them. Twitter was going like, ha, 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 like making fun of them. But in reality, a bunch of brands rallied behind the couple and gave them a free wedding. So KFC, all the brands, Suits, Bouquet, honeymoon people rallied behind them to give them a good wedding. But all I can say is love is love. So wherever you have to do it, propose and have your wedding and save money, because I'm still paying off that wedding debt.
Yeah, I do remember that news as well, Brandon. Well, what do you think of this trend of holding weddings at unexpected venues?
I think that's actually really cool. Not being typical. Most people, like I said, do it at like a church or something like that, but having a special place that you have it at makes it more memorable and different than other people.
Great. All right, Britt. Oh, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. Find love, people. Good luck.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Brandon, for your time today. And once again, big congratulations to you and your wife, too.
Thank you very much, and have a lovely day, you guys.
Thank you. Right, so this trend brings up an important question for us to think about, which is what's the most important factor to consider when planning a wedding? Because some might prioritize tradition or formality, while others feel the couple's satisfaction is what truly matters. So ending off our episode today, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the most important thing about marriage, when you think about marriage, I think the most critical, the most important thing that you've got to consider is who you are marrying, not the formalities itself. You've got to find the right person for you, your Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. It's about respecting your own style and making your guests feel welcome for the wedding. Whether it's in a grand hall or a cozy cafe, the heart of the day is what matters. And speaking as someone who's been married for 10 years, I sound all very old, by the way. Marriage is a lifelong journey, not a one-day spotlight.
Some great advice from someone who has been married for a decade. What about you, Wonbin?
I also think that the objective factors are the last things to be considered and judged. The million-dollar question must be, is this what the marrying couple wants, and are they happy? Well, for me, I personally like to make financial decisions that will help me in the future, and weddings are no exception. So a budget-friendly wedding or even a no wedding would be a good option for me. I can hear my mom getting upset and my future wife crying. But anyways, the important factors will be different for everyone. A big traditional wedding will be suitable for some, while a small outdoors wedding will fit others. As long as the bride, groom, parents, and the guests have a good time, I think that there is no definitive answer.
Right, there's no definitive answer. And that's all from us today, but NewsGen will be back next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Kwon Ji-yeon.
Have a lovely Friday.
Have a lovely weekend too.
Thank you.
And you, Wonbin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching, and hope you have a lovely weekend. We are News Generation.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking